He didn't mean to save the world. He wasn't chasing fame or trying to change history. He just forgot to clean his lab. It started with a vacation. In September of 1928, Alexander Fleming, a quiet Scottish scientist, returned to his cluttered lab at St. Mary's Hospital in London. The air was heavy with dust, and the late summer sun barely made it through the soot-covered windows. His desk? A battlefield of glassware, half-labeled dishes, and forgotten experiments. He sighed, brushing crumbs off a stack of Petri dishes he'd left before leaving. A normal day, in a normal lab, for a man who had no idea he was standing on the edge of a medical revolution. He started sorting through the dishes. Most were growing bacteria, nothing unusual. But one made him stop. A dish had been contaminated. Mold had grown, uninvited, right in the middle of the bacterial colonies. He leaned in. Something wasn't right. All around the mold. The bacteria were gone, erased, as if an invisible force had pushed them back. Fleming didn't throw it away. He stared at it, mesmerized. "What are you?" he whispered, more to himself than the dish. He had no idea he was staring at the first glimpse of penicillin, a compound that would eventually save more lives than any drug in human history. He began to test it, carefully, methodically. The mold was killing bacteria, but it didn't seem to harm human cells. That had never been done before. Substances that killed bacteria usually killed everything else too. But not this. This was different. Fleming named the active agent penicillin after the mold, Penicillium notatum. He wrote a paper, published it. But the scientific world barely noticed. His experiments were too unstable. The mold was hard to grow, impossible to mass produce. No one thought it was practical. And so, the most important discovery of his life was shelved, forgotten, for over a decade. Then, the world changed. As World War II erupted across Europe, soldiers fell by the thousands. Not just from bullets, but from infections. In the trenches and on the front lines, a scratch could mean amputation. A deep wound? Almost certainly death. Doctors fought not only against enemy fire, but against time, against bacteria, against invisible enemies they couldn't kill. In a quiet lab at Oxford University, two researchers, Howard Florey and Ernst Boris Chain, stumbled across Fleming's old paper. They read it once, then again. Their eyes widened. Could it be real? Could this long-forgotten mold actually hold the key? They got to work. At first, just to replicate Fleming's results. They infected mice with deadly bacteria. Some were given penicillin. The others weren't. The difference was clear. And horrifying. The untreated mice died. The treated ones lived. The implications hit them like thunder. They didn't just find something interesting. They found a weapon, a miracle, a cure. But the clock was ticking. Producing penicillin in usable amounts was nearly impossible. It degraded fast. It was delicate. And the yield? Pitiful. They would need a breakthrough, and fast. So they went on a mold hunt. They searched farms, laboratories, forests. They asked the public to send in anything moldy. And one day in the Peoria, Illinois market, a woman handed over a cantaloupe. Rotten, soft, and covered in spores. It looked like trash. But inside was gold. This cantaloupe carried a strain of Penicillium chrysogenum that produced over 200 times more penicillin than anything they had seen before. That moldy fruit changed everything. Factories began to churn. Secret labs were built in the US, and UK scientists worked day and night, trying to keep up. By the time Allied troops stormed the beaches of Normandy on D-Day, enough penicillin existed to treat every single soldier wounded in battle. Wounds that would have taken lives, now healed. Back home, a child with pneumonia lived. A farmer with sepsis walked again. A young mother, once doomed by infection after childbirth, held her baby and survived. The mold was no longer a lab curiosity. It was a revolution. A new age of medicine had begun. In 1945, Alexander Fleming stood on stage, finally recognized, receiving the Nobel Prize alongside Florey and Chain. Cameras flashed. Reporters cheered. But amid the celebration, Fleming's face was solemn. In his speech, he gave a warning. Quiet, serious, but prophetic. "There is the danger," he said, "that the ignorant man may easily underdose himself, and by exposing his microbes to non-lethal quantities of the drug, make them resistant." People clapped, but few really listened. Today, nearly 100 years later, that warning echoes louder than ever. The miracle that saved millions now faces a slow, invisible undoing. Bacteria are evolving. We call them superbugs, strains that no antibiotic, not even penicillin, can kill. And they're winning. Every year, more than 1 million people die from antibiotic-resistant infections.